Hey everyone, welcome to the Brentwood Baptist Leadership Podcast. I'm Bill Ferrell, your host for this episode, and this month, every episode is focused on leadership. Today we're talking about something every leader faces: hard conversations. Most leaders know they need to have them. The challenge is knowing how to do it in a way that actually leads to clarity, health, and resolution. These conversations are all designed to help strengthen church leaders as we head toward our Elevate Church Conference on September 21st and 22nd of this year. So today I'm joined by my friend Jay Fennel, and we're going to talk about how to have hard conversations that actually move things forward. So let's jump in. Welcome, Jay. Tell me why so many church leaders just avoid having hard conversations, even though they know they're necessary?
Well, Bill, because hard conversations are hard.
Oh, thank you, Confucius.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
They are. They can be uncomfortable, and in a church context, we don't want to damage relationships, and we want to. We don't want to be considered unkind. You know what I'm saying?
I do know what you're saying. Yes.
And so I think, but I think underneath all of that is kind of a fear, a fear of conflict, a fear of rejection, a fear of things getting messy. So, that to me, I think, at least from my experience in moments where I've hesitated to have hard conversations, it was just the feeling of feeling awkward or uncomfortable, or how's this going to go? How am I going to be perceived?
It's not just at work. I mean, it's at home. I don't have a tough conversation with my wife, with my kids, with my friends. I mean, you're right. It's in some places it's easier to avoid them, but at work we often know we need to have these because we can't let things go as they are. It can have future consequences if we don't. We work toward that. From our experience, and you've been here even longer than me, what's the cost of waiting too long to address tension, conflict, or unhealthy patterns? What have you seen there?
Yeah, it just delays. It just multiplies the problem.
Okay.
You know what I mean? I mean, it just multiplies the problem. And honestly, at the end of the day, it can grieve unity in the body. I mean, I think you let something keep going on and on and on, and procrastinate the conversation. It does no good for anything, for that person, for the team that you lead, but even just the church that you lead, And so, from my context, I think about staff relationships, and I think about harmony amongst staff and working together well. And if there's conflict that needs to be talked about, if there's hard conversations that need to be had, and you keep putting it off, that just affects morale.
Yeah, I think you're really onto something there, because even though we don't want to have these hard conversations, when something's not right and it needs to be dealt with, I had a team member give me some really good feedback a couple of years ago, and they said, Bill, there's nothing more demotivational to one team member than when you're not having that hard conversation with another team member who's, who needs to hear it, And I just thought, this is about team chemistry, team unity, and you're right. In the church, we have an enemy. It's not each other, it's the devil, and he knows how to get in and how to grind out, disunity. And nothing is more disruptive, in my opinion, in the church world, in the staff conversations than when we're ununified.
And I've even thought before that sometimes, if we delay it, a 10-minute conversation can turn into a months-long conflict. And
you're right, man.
And if you just deal with it, have the conversation, strive for some sort of understanding, and a path forward, I think that helps a lot. But you're right. The whole idea of if you don't deal with conflict on the team, other team members are seeing it. And in many ways, that could affect your leadership and how you're perceived as a leader.
Well, it can undermine it a bit because as leaders, I think we're called to deal with issues, right? I mean, you have to, and if you don't, it erodes trust that your other team members have, and that you're going to bring, in a sense, justice to what's under your care. And so I think that's another question I want to ask is how do we let leaders know, or what will we tell them about how hard conversations are really about clarity, they're about care, they're about resolution. They're not just about conflict.
Yeah, and I think that's the mindset that we need to have when we think about hard conversations. It's not, our purpose in it is not to make people squirm. It's to help them develop.
Yeah,
you know? And I think that's the greater good of it. And I think about Jesus' ministry. I mean, he was the master of like hard conversations.
So true.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
I'm even thinking about the Samaritan woman. You know, and that moment where Jesus says, "Yeah, you've had 5 husbands, and the man that you're with now is not your husband," and just just spoke truth in a moment. And but you know, what was his purpose in that? I mean, his purpose in that was for her redemption, for her relationship with God, and so he had a greater purpose. It wasn't just to put her down; it was to build her up. I think about even the time where Jesus rebuked Peter and said, "Get behind me, Satan," you know, and that moment, I'm sure that was hard for Peter to hear, but in the moment he was opposing what, you know, the suffering that Jesus would have in Jerusalem to come. And so I think, you know, Jesus models that for us, is like our goal is to see good things happen. You know, and you know, Jesus had a kingdom mindset. He had a developmental gospel mindset for the people that he related to, and I think that should be our motivation as well.
Yeah, it's not just trying to let people we're talking to know that we're right. It's about restoring them to a rightness, if you will, getting them to a better place.
Yeah, it's not about winning the argument. It's about winning your brother.
Yeah. I think I think you got that right. Yeah. I've said to people in the past, and I've thought about this, you know, in conflict, in resolving things, or even in you know, regular conversations you have, you kind of have a choice between making a point or making a difference. You know, and I think there's a line there, you know, because you're not. It's not about being right, right? It's about making a difference. It's about caring for the person. It's about restoring them to it, right? And it's about moving forward, right? Forgive and forget. Let's deal with this, and let's get things moving in the right direction. You know, from someone who loves efficiency. It doesn't make sense to let something fester for 2-3 weeks, a month or more, because you're right. You're spending more time thinking about how it's going to go and wondering about it and grinding over it and agonizing and losing sleep over it. I don't got time for that. You know, it's not a great methodology to simply delay things, right? Yeah. They're not going to get better on their own, in my opinion. I think that, you know, when we have hard conversations, it's because they need to be had, and then we need to think about, obviously, how to do them, but it's better to correct quickly than to wait down the road. You know, if something gets off track now, and it's off track by 1 degree, we can just gently pull it back. But if we let it go for a week or two, it's not off by 1 degree. It's off by 5 degrees.
That's true.
And boy, it's harder to bring it back into alignment. You know, that's not surprising.
Yeah, it definitely complicates it. And I would say that, you know, we want to shepherd people well.
Yeah.
And so part of it is a shepherding opportunity to have these hard conversations. Clarity is kindness.
Yeah.
And so to be clear, to shepherd, to help people move forward, you know, because we care about them, that has to be communicated as a part of this process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why is it important to remember that avoiding a hard conversation is still making a decision?
Yeah, it is. You know, all it does is just kind of prolong the dysfunction or the issue that you're trying to. But it is like avoiding something is communicating something. Avoidance is communication.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, you're either giving approval, or you're indifferent.
Yeah.
To the situation.
Sometimes people infer when you're silent, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, this is kind of a funny side note, but, you know, for many times my wife will say to me, you know, sometimes when you're silent, I think you agree, but you don't always agree, do you? And I'm like, no, I don't. You know, and so we laugh about that. So we've just in our own communication over the years decided to just ask point blank, hey, do you agree with me or not? You know, just clarity. And you said that earlier, clarity is kindness. I would rather know where you stand than to have you be silent and assume where you stand. That's not a good idea. One
question I have for you.
Lovely.
I'm gonna turn the table.
Let's do it.
when is it, when do you know, and these aren't in the notes, right? When do you know when there is a little bit of a tension, but sometimes it's better just it's going to take care of itself versus inserting ourselves a little too aggressively in a moment and making it a bigger deal than it needed to be?
That's a great question. For me, personally, I try to give some things a little bit of time, just in principle, to see if they might work themselves out. Secondly, try to figure out if I'm directly involved, if I can be part of the solution, or if I try to be part of the solution, maybe it'll just exacerbate the problem. You have to take some discernment there to figure that out. And depending on the situation, maybe even it is a work situation. If it's outside of my area, I just try to be carefully discern whether I should get into there. When you get to a certain level in the organization, and you're at that level, you and I both, if you step into something, people may think it's more of a big deal than it is. So I just want to carefully think through that. Now, if I have a relationship with somebody, and I try to develop relationships with people across the staff, because it's way easier to have a hard conversation with someone you already have a pretty solid relationship with. Because, if you and I had to have a hard conversation with one another, you could say something to me, I could take it. I know you care about me. We're friends. Hey, it might sting a little, but still, I know that your baseline purpose is because you do care about me. And I generally will only have a hard conversation with somebody, let's say outside of work, if I think it's going to make a difference. That might seem silly to say out loud here, but in other words, if I thought I needed to tell you to stop doing something and start, if I didn't think you were even going to pay any attention to that, I wouldn't even bother. Why would I create any angst between us when it didn't make any difference? But sometimes at work, we have to have that conversation because it's damaging the entire team or the organization or whatever it is. And so when we get ready for those conversations, how do we do that? What do you do when you're gonna have a difficult conversation? What are some questions you would maybe ask yourself first?
Yeah. So the first question I think that I would ask myself is, what is the goal?
Okay.
Like, what is the hope for outcome of this conversation? What am I looking to do? Am I seeking restoration? Am I seeking relief? Is there some sort of corrective measure that needs to take place? Like I think to know the goal, it would be really, really important.
Yeah.
Like, what do I want? What I hope will happen? I think the second question that you have to ask is my heart right with the Lord? Like, have I truly prayed and asked the Lord for wisdom about this conversation, about this person perhaps that I need to talk to? Okay. Another question that I would have is, do I have all the facts, or am I assuming things, about the situation? Yeah. Because, inevitably what we do is we create a narrative.
You're right.
We ascribe motivation.
Yes, we make a little novelette here.
We do. And so, we see things through our filter, through our eyes, and then we make an assumption. Yeah. We create a story, and then we act on that. And we approach the meeting or approach the conversation assuming things. So you can't do that. You really have to really think, make sure you have all the facts right. And then the last piece, what would be for me, the last question that I would ask would be, how would I want someone to approach me about this conversation?
Kind of the golden rule of our conversations, perhaps. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, what's the best place? Like, when's the best time to do it? Yeah. Is it a like impromptu hallway conversation? Probably not. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Like have some self-awareness or around that. Yeah. Or does it need to be a little bit more intentional? Yeah. A little bit more formalized? Hey, let's go grab some coffee. We'll meet and talk. Let's meet in my office, meet in your office, however that needs to look. But I think that needs to be thought through too. Just even the setting itself is an important aspect to having hard conversations. Yeah, what do you think?
I think you're onto something here, because you don't want to just do it, react emotionally. In the situation, you want to think about things, you want to get the facts, and then when you have the conversation, it can even be about hearing the other side of the story, but trying to get as much as you can. Sometimes we don't have all information, but you're right, just knowing how to do it, and then how to say it well. Right? I think preparing maybe even a little bit of the thoughts of the words you're going to use. Yeah. I find that often we when we envision the narrative about how a conversation is going to go, we often envision it way worse than it really ends up, is the truth.
That's true.
I know in my life, when I look back over things I thought were going to go horribly wrong, they were difficult, but they weren't as bad as I can imagine them. Our imaginations can just run wild on things. And sometimes we do. We don't have all the facts. I can tell you early on when I was in the ministry, and this happened to me 25 years ago, the story I'm about to tell you, I was working over the Christmas holidays, and the staff was pretty sparse during those days, a lot of vacations. We were getting ready for, obviously Christmas and stuff. This is a previous church, not Brentwood Baptist, let me say that. I was a young minister, and I happened to see the outgoing mail one day. And I looked in the outgoing mail, and I noticed there was a bill in there, like someone's electric bill was put in the outgoing mail, and it had been run through the postage meter. And I thought, who would be using the church's postage meter to put their personal bill in the mail? It seemed silly. I immediately jumped to a conclusion. Well, I looked on it because I wanted to see who it was. And guess what? It was our senior pastor. And so rather than call him, rather than ask him, rather than get all the facts, I simply sent him an email. Jay, this is what not to do. I sent him an email and I said, hey, I noticed a piece of mail with run through the postage meter in the outgoing mail, and I don't appreciate my tithe dollars paid for your mail.
You said it to the senior pastor.
That was not. I put it in writing. Yeah, this was this. These are. Hey, list of Bill's failures. This is near the top 5 guys.
I would not recommend that sort of response.
Now, how do you think he reacted to that, Jay? Yeah,
I'm sure with a lot of grace.
Yeah. It actually was. He called me and here's what he said. I'll never forget it. I mean, I really learned a lot. He said, Bill, listen. He said, first of all, I give money to my admin. I pay for that. I give them money so that they can run it through. And I found out that was a practice there, but I didn't know that. He had paid for his postage. But he said, secondly, I hate it when people question my integrity. I absolutely hate it. He said, but I actually do respect it too, because if you see something that doesn't look right, I appreciate you telling me. You didn't do it well. You had the right idea, but you can't talk that way. And I realized, okay, yeah. So I learned something. He did graciously correct me.
That's good leadership.
But man, it was I thought when I look back on that, I go, that wasn't my best moment. Not my best moment. So what? Let's talk a little bit about what makes these conversations go well. What's a good opening that you might use in the conversation? Let's say the person comes in, they're not really sure what you're going to be talking about. How might you open that conversation?
Well, I would say, honestly, that if you're wanting to have a hard conversation and they have no idea what you're about to talk about, that's probably not good practice.
Okay, yeah.
You know
surprise. Yeah, not great.
I don't think hard conversations should be like surprises.
Okay.
But well, if anything, if you got something to talk about, at least a little bit of a heads up. Hey, man, I'm feeling some tension, or there's this issue. Yeah, you're probably aware of it. If you're not, here's a little bit of a snippet. I want us to have a conversation about that. Okay. And so you're kind of preempting them a little bit. So I think that would be the biggest thing. Yeah. I think for me, in those conversations that I have, one of the first things that I do is I just kind of say, hey, here's why we're here. And here's what I hope at the end of this conversation, what I hope the outcome will be. Okay.
You've already, that what you talked about in the preparation phase, you've already determined what you hope the outcome can be.
Yeah. This is what, so right from the jump, the beginning of the conversation, hey, Bill, at the end of this conversation, I hope that this will be what we walk out with today.
Okay, great. I like that.
And then I start with trying to give the facts.
Yeah.
Here's what I have been, here's what I've seen, or here's what I feel, or here's what's been told to me.
Sure. Yeah.
And so I kind of lay those out, and then from there, and this is a crucial thing, I think.
Yeah.
Is once that's been laid out, then the next thing is, if that's not the way it needs to be seen, help me understand so that I can see it in a way that it needs to be seen from your perspective. And so that's inviting some conversation, and not just immediately starting with accusation.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I think that just, if it starts there, the conversation just goes down here pretty quickly. And then it just becomes more like emotional. And when the emotions rise, the logic goes low.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
I'm going to quote you on that, Jay. That's good. Yeah. Because I was going to say, what are the mistakes people make? Well, you just named two of them right off the bat, right? They either, they don't invite a conversation. Maybe they don't have all the facts, or they let it get emotional, or they start accusing. Yeah. What are other things you've seen go wrong?
I think just not listening is one.
Okay.
Not listening well. I mean, I heard a pastor say one time that to listen is to love.
Okay.
Or to listen well is to love. And so if in the conversation, your listening is only just to prepare your rebuttal. And you're only thinking about that. That's not active listening. And so I think listening well, trying to understand them, truly trying to understand, I think communicates a lot. In that situation.
Putting your phone on Do Not Disturb, that kind of thing.
Or just putting it down, or not face up but face down, or whatever, or just whatever. But just trying to really focus on that. And I think one other thing that I would mention is not bringing up multiple other issues in the middle of this one.
This isn't a time to fly around the Milky Way of issues. Let's just deal with this one today.
Just here's the main one. Here's what we want to deal with today. I'm not trying to throw in a bunch of things to kind of to strengthen your argument. You know what I mean? I think that just discredits you as a leader.
I think you're right there. How do you balance sort of this empathy side and the honesty piece? You kind of have to put those together, it sounds like, in these conversations.
Yeah, I think that the empathy piece is really important. And some people are naturally more empathetic than others, but I think truth without love. I mean, what does it say? What the scriptures say? Speak the truth in love. So truth without love can feel harsh. But love without truth can feel hollow. You know? And so you want there to be some substance to the conversation. So there has to be a mixture both of truth. I want to be a truth teller here in this moment. I want to speak the truth in a loving way, in a clear way, but say what needs to be said. But at the end of the day, what needs to be communicated is, I'm for you. You know?
That needs to be the overall tenor of this conversation.
Right. The kind of the posture is so, tone, body language, word choice, like all that stuff really matters in those conversations.
What if somebody goes dead silent, or they get wildly emotional, or they start crying their eyes out? What should you do in these moments?
Well, thankfully I haven't really been in a whole lot of those conversations.
Okay.
But I would say, rather than absorb the emotion, rather to mirror the emotion, absorb the emotion.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It does to me.
So
tell our watchers, our listeners, what that means to you.
Well, I think what that means is like, if someone gets emotional or gets a little irrational, takes the tenor of the conversation up. The worst thing to do is to meet them there.
Okay.
Because that
they
just
start talking louder and faster. You do the same.
You do the same. You get louder, and you get accusatory. And so you have to kind of keep your cool in those situations. Like I said a minute ago, when the emotions run high, the logic begins to run low. And so you just don't think straight. And you start to kind of be impulsive and reactive versus responsive. Like rather than having a measured, calculating response, you start to feel it personal, and you start to feel the emotions and then it just becomes impulsive. And oftentimes our filters drop and we just say stuff. And that's just that makes it worse or gets you in trouble.
Our staff counselor Keith Tenpenny will often say, when the situation is electric, you be the ground. In other words,
that's good.
You be the steady, you be the calm. When stuff's going, haywire and bonkers, hey, just be calm. Sometimes.
Have you ever been in a situation where you've been in the meeting got emotional and you just said, "Hey, time out. Let's take a break and then come back together when we've kind of cooled off a little bit"? I've never done that in a work environment. I have.
I was going to say only with my wife. You read my mind.
Okay.
Yes. Does it happen at work? No. Now, I've had it where it got pretty emotional at work, and I would just generally be silent. I'm thinking of the last time this happened. I was fairly silent. I was meeting with an employee, and they were a little bit teary-eyed. And I stopped for a few minutes, and I said, "Hey, I can see this is, developing a strong emotion for you. What's going through your mind? What's causing that today? I try to slow down my speech, calm down, and just ask a empathetic question about it. What's causing that? Yeah. If it's at home I'll usually say, hey, let's take a time out. Let's catch our breath. Okay. I always tell people, if you're in a difficult conversation, this is a sidelight from work, but you're in a difficult conversation with someone, it's okay to withdraw from that conversation if you ask permission. Don't just say, I'm done, and walk off. Just say, hey,
that's a really good
I know I'm a little upset right now.
Yeah.
Let's take 30 minutes to calm down and come back together. Or let's take an hour. I never let it go overnight. So now I'm telling you kind of my Bill's home life rules here. We don't go overnight with a conversation. But when you get into it with a family member, and this could be your wife or another, just say, hey, I need to just think about this for a minute. Let's talk in an hour. Let me calm myself down. Just ask for permission to withdraw. That's okay. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with that. That's a good idea. I've not had to do that at work. I've not.
But it may come up in work.
It's okay.
And it could be that even one of the employees is really emotional and you're not. Sure. But the conversation is not productive, and maybe there needs to be a time where you just kind of have to take initiative and say, "All right, out of respect for you or the situation, let's."
Yeah, I think that's a good point you're making. Mm-hmm. After you have a hard conversation, let's talk about resolution a little bit. What does real resolution look like after a hard conversation? What would you hope how that would end?
Yeah, so I would hope that there would be clarity on the issue.
Okay.
Number one.
Yes. Okay.
I would hope that there would be an agreement on at least the next steps. Agreement on the issue may not happen.
Okay. No, might not.
But agreement on next steps could potentially happen.
Okay.
And I think that would be one. Yeah. And then I would want to preserve or restore the relationship with that person.
Okay.
As some of my goals for resolution.
Yeah.
But I do think that mutual understanding can be achieved. That could be a path forward. If anything, even though you may leave a hard conversation disagreeing with one another on whatever the issue is, there still can be mutual respect and understanding that comes out of it. Yeah, and I think that's a great step forward.
Yeah. I mean, we're not perfect human beings. We have to work together, regardless of whether we agree on an issue. Sometimes I'll tell people, we might not even agree on what the solution needs to be, but in this role, it's my job to make a decision on this, and so I'm going to do that, and we're going to have to move forward with it. They don't always agree, but I think you're right. I think they can sometimes respect that. It's why I say it's in any meeting, in any kind of group, there needs to be a leader, in my opinion, someone who's the ultimate. Hey, we may not all agree, but I've heard everything, and I'm making a decision. We're going in this direction, and we go. And I think that's super important. What happens if a hard conversation doesn't go the way we hoped? I don't know if you've had that happen or not.
Well, all we can do is control our side of that, and so I think, our job is to be as faithful as we can be in the role that the Lord has given to us. And, there's a passage in Romans that talks about, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone.
Yeah.
And so I think our job in those moments is to be people of integrity, to be people of empathy, to be people of care, and have the proper mindset in those conversations, and to be faithful to pursue, to fulfilling our leadership role as best we can. Yeah. But ultimately, there are two sides, and there are two people in any sort of conversation like that, and you just have to do your part to make sure that you're being as faithful as you can. You can't control all the outcomes all the time.
Yeah, you're preaching the truth there. Yeah, you can't always control the outcome, and so as much as it depends on you, you do the best you can. Let's wrap it up with this question, Jay. If someone listening today, someone viewing this podcast, needs to have a hard conversation soon, what's the first step they should take in teeing that up?
Well, I would say the first thing to do would be to start with prayer and ask the Lord for wisdom, and courage to take steps to having those conversations, and not put it off. And so, delayed is not the answer. Is to, start with prayer, be clear on what your goal is for the conversation, understanding that, and then maybe even, write that down. Like, what's my goal on this?
Yeah.
And just don't overcomplicate it. Just schedule the meeting, and think it through, pray about it, pray through it, choose your words wisely, think about what the goals and the outcomes you want for the meeting, and pray that the Lord and the Holy Spirit directs the conversation in that way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That to me would be my encouragement to someone.
I think that's good. I think one thing I would consider adding to that is if you have a trusted friend, maybe even not an employee, maybe someone who does what you do at another church. Sometimes you run those ideas by them just to have good advice. You're not talking about said employee, but you're trying to make sure that here's what I'm thinking, here's how I'm approaching it. Just get some wisdom, from others. Share the burden a little bit as well. In our roles, we're lucky. We work on a big team here at Brentwood, and so we have each other to talk through things, support each other. But I would say for the smaller church pastor, hey, you're never alone out there, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, we're not that busy. You couldn't even reach out to us and go, hey, I've got a situation. What would you think on this?
Absolutely.
We value trying to be a church that resources others, and so that's what we want to be about. And I think that hopefully even through this podcast, people are getting the impression that, we do care about how we do it here, but also that others are, supplied well.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, we want to shepherd people well, and these folks are loved by the Lord. In these hard conversations with people that we have, they're loved by the Lord, and God has a plan for their life. And for whatever reason, in this particular epoch of time, put us together. We got to make it work. Yeah. And so we care about people. And we want them to grow and follow Jesus and grow in their vocation or whatever God's called them to do.
Yeah.
And so that's part of our responsibility as leaders to help with that.
I love it. Well, Jay, thanks for that conversation.
Good.
Hey,
thanks,
hard
man.
Conversations are never easy, for sure. But
this has been an easy conversation.
All right, good. Oh, good. Well, when they're handled well, they can actually strengthen trust and relationships. And I think I think we're doing that. We're trying to do that here every day.
Yeah.
If today's episode was helpful for you, we'd love for you to join us at the Elevate Church Conference, September 21st and 22nd. You can learn more about that and register for it at the elevatechurchconference.com. Thanks for listening to the Brentwood Baptist Leadership Podcast. We will see you again soon.